My name is Anthony Rubio, and I am a pet couturier. I studied fashion design for women's wear, and I decided to go into a different career change. So years later, while I was working, I got a phone call to rescue a dog. The dog was in pretty bad shape, so I took the dog home, rehabilitated him, and started dressing him because he was always cold. And when we went out places, people started taking notice, and they were asking me if I would design for them. So I decided, why not? I tried it, and it took off. I studied women's wear fashion, so it was funny because I came back to it when I had abandoned it many years before. But it's not the same thing dressing a dog as it is a human being, because it's a whole different, body. The clothing has to fit a different way, and while people wear things that you see from the front, the dog is from the back because they're always on the ground. So I had to teach myself. But I've also been tapped to give lectures at Fashion Institute of Technology, which is also the college I studied for women's wear, and they're teaching pet design there now too. And it's starting to spread out because this is a $1 trillion industry. This is an industry that's ever growing. There are more designers now than when I first started doing this about 12 years ago, and it's just taking off. Nothing is easy when you first present it. I was taught very early on that either I would be a designer, which is why I dropped doing fashion. I would have to compete with other designers and try to meet up with their standards and keep up with that race, or create my own niche and design something that nobody else was doing, be the best at it, stay up there and keep creating to stay ahead of the line. And basically that's what I've done. I've created my own couture. I am the first pet couture designer, and it's taken off. And while other people are trying to reach my level, it's like I set a high bar. So there's a lot to go after, because if you look at some of my work, it's hand done. This is not just a piece of fabric that's sewn together. It's couture, it's hand done flowers, it's hand sewn stones, and it's custom fitted to the dog. Something I might add also is the fact that I use stretchable, breathable fabrics, which means that it's safe for the dogs. I don't put the dogs in danger. I don't use chemicals. I don't use glues. I don't use anything that would put the dogs in any kind of harm's way. So a lot of the garments are open so the dog can do their business. They don't have to, try to get out of the clothing. You see how comfortable my dog is. He's very comfortable in their clothing. And that's what the intention is. It's not only to draw attention to the dog and be cute, because the dogs don't know any better. They don't know if they like it. They don't care about the color. They don't care about the style. They want to make the owner happy. I do a lot of traveling. You were asking about inspiration. I do a lot of traveling worldwide, mostly in Europe. And I was in Europe, and as a matter of fact, I was visiting Vogue, the Vogue headquarters of Vogue Italia, who did a story on me. And I got the email where I was asked if I would like to present on the runways of New York Fashion Week. The whole idea was that it's never been done before to put dogs on the runways of New York Fashion Week in the history of the whole thing. None of the fashion weeks. Whenever you saw a pet, it was as an accessory up in the woman's hands. Very much like what you would see Paris Hilton or any of those people. But what we decided to do was do the dogs in clothing, mainly my couture. But there was one exception. They wanted the dogs, they wanted for me to design women's wear, because the only way you get the foot in the door is by designing for people. So I had to come up with a women's wear line. While in Italy, I picked up the fabrics. I got in touch with the people that do the custom fabrics for Dolce & Gabbana, and I brought some of the fabrics home with me. And from there, I created a line that I submitted, and they were very pleased with it. And we hit the runways, and everybody was loving it. Now I'm doing my 6th New York Fashion Week show, because they keep wanting more, and it gets better and better each time. I draw inspiration from everything. I'm always on the lookout. So I would say that in the beginning it was always about movies. and about characters that stood out, iconic characters. And then from there, I took it to the next level where I was visiting museums. And I think that my biggest inspiration was a visit to the Metropolitan Museum to see the exhibit called Savage Beauty by Alexander McQueen. From there, I was noticing that a lot of the needlework was similar to things I was doing, so I translated that into couture for dogs. Other than the shows being as successful as they've been and getting me a lot of notoriety, it's hilarious to see that of all the designers, and I'm talking about the top designers in New York Fashion Week, I'm tending to get more press than anybody else, and I've been covered from anyone from Harper's Bazaar, Glamour magazine, and so I decided to start playing again with the iconic pieces for what they call doppelgangers. Doppelgangers are lookalikes, or that they resemble somebody that's famous. So I did such pieces as Michael Jackson, I've done Elvis Presley, and I also did an iconic piece that was worn by Sarah Jessica Parker. The headpiece was designed by Philip Treacy, who also used to design for Alexander McQueen. And the piece got picked up by People magazine, and then it was picked up by many publications afterwards. I'm planning on doing that again, probably for the Met Gala. But the last Met Gala, they did a fashion presentation on Comme des Garçons. Rei Kawakubo's the designer, Japanese designer. And over the weekend before Met Gala, I had the bright idea to make miniature pieces that look just like Rei Kawakubo's designs. We did the photo shoot, submitted them on Monday morning, the day of the Met Gala. By midday, it was all over the internet. Harper's Bazaar picked up the story and they loved everything about it, and then several publications showed it also. So yeah, we have fun. You know, it's about dressing the dogs and being a little silly at times, but it's all about great photography, great presentation, entertainment, and making people smile. Once the doors were open for me to do New York Fashion Week, I had the idea that I've always been an advocate for animal rescue, pet adoption, population control. So I decided to use the platform, since it was given to me as a gift, to bring in the idea of presenting the pet adoption, bringing in rescues. So we tried it one year and brought in rescues from Puerto Rico. They're called Satos. And the dog that was eating out of garbage one day was now on the runways of Fashion Week in New York. And the story turns out that it was from rags to riches, because the dog ended up being adopted immediately after the show by the assistant to a very prominent designer during Fashion Week. And from then on, every show I do, I bring in a different charity organization and I present one of their dogs, if not a couple of them. This past show, I had the privilege of showing for the Guide Dog Foundation, which is the dogs that they breed and raise to give away to the matched people who have disabilities, be it war veterans or people with disabilities in the United States. And it's a very special new thing that I work for, that's very close to my heart. This is my Chihuahua Kimba, who graces the runways of New York Fashion Week and has been in a lot of publications. And they earn their own money, by the way. They've modeled for Swatch commercials, and they get a lot of attention, as you can see. And he's got a brother named Bogey, and they like to wear clothing, they like to wear hats. Bogey likes to wear shades, and they love to travel, and they're very attached to me. I adopted Bogey and Kimba when they were 2.5 months old. And as the story goes, Kimba was not supposed to come home with me. Kimba was the extra one they brought along, and Bogey was the one that I was supposed to adopt. But I told the person that I adopted the dogs from that I couldn't separate them because they would go through anxiety, and honestly speaking, I couldn't go through that. So I said, I'll take them both. She said she had a promised home for this one, but he was in my arms all the time, as you can see, and he's still in my arms now. In the future, I would like to venture into film and television, but I also want to secure a brand name that people will rely on for not just fashion, but for advice, that I could be helpful to people. Like I said, I like to advocate for the pet industry. I like to advocate for the health issues that dogs go through, and cats, because they do suffer from things like cancer that people are not aware of. And I like to help with fundraising, which is something else that I should talk about, I do a lot of fundraising. I do events in different parts of the country, and I raise huge amounts of money. I just did the Guide Dog Foundation, their show, and their goal was 40,000. I raised 53,000. And in Washington, D.C., we raised $750,000 for the Humane Society of Washington. So I'm constantly doing something. It's not just that I do 2 shows for New York Fashion Week, but I'm also doing presentations abroad so people could see what I do, and it brings to light what I want to educate them on.